Dr. Modupe Adefeso-Olateju is an education policy expert specializing in public-private partnerships. She is the Managing Director of the Education Partnership Center, TEP Center, Nigeria's pioneering education partnership organization. She leads work streams on a range of education sector support initiatives, funded or assisted by international and corporate funders. She also trains public sector officials and development organizations on strategic planning, monitoring, and evaluation. Dr. Adefeso-Olateju is leading the implementation of Learn Nigeria, a citizen-led household assessment and advocacy program. She also leads the organization of the Pan-African Education Innovation Summit, NEDIS. She was also co-convener of the National Education Conference hosted by the Federal Ministry of Education in 2018 and 2019 and wrote a section of their Strategic Plan for Education 2011 to 2015. She serves on the advisory committee of the Brookings Institute Millions Learning 2.0 program. Dr. Adefeso-Olateju was previously the Monitoring and Evaluation Workstream Lead with DFID's ESSPIN program, Business Analyst with Accenture, and Vice President at Junior Achievement. She also...
Hello everyone. This is FY Elens-Edeh with Social Impact Consulting. How's everyone doing today? So I am here as promised with Dr. Modupe Adefeso-Olateju. Mo, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello.
I can't see you again. Oh.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, how you doing?
All right, thank you.
Great. So, you know, when I had decided on this executive discussion series live, I wanted the folks that we speak to be very versatile. So we spoke to Mr. Abosuremi yesterday, who is a startup emerging civil society organization that has made themselves influential. So now we're talking to an education expert. I have admired Dr. Adefeso-Olateju for so many years. You've just been moving forward and become very globally renowned as an education researcher, advocate. You know, you even help governments develop policies and implementation. So I'm very excited that you even made the time to speak to us today. So thank you for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Great. So what I wanted to ask you, the topic of this live series is NGO relevance in COVID-19 pandemic. And as we know, the education sector in a country like Nigeria, and I can even predict, to speak for sub-Saharan Africa, that it's had to take a hit because, you know, we're used to the analog methodology where we're in school personally with the teacher and everything. So now that we are that students are stuck at home, you know, it has affected the whole value chain in terms of education, the schools, the teachers, and even the civil society organizations that serve students and the schools. So what happened like during the COVID-19 pandemic? Like, what were you hearing from I'm sure you were just getting a flooding of calls coming in, like, what do we do? What do we do? So what was the landscape then, and how has the system slowly been able to adjust to the current realities?
Thank you so much, Efra. It is absolutely wonderful, you know, to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you for coming.
I think that it's safe to say that the entire world, you know, was taken by surprise.
Definitely.
This pandemic, I don't think is anything anyone could have planned for. And all we need to do is look at the numbers of persons who've been affected, the number of fatalities, and think about the economic impact on nations right now. Someone said to me the other day, we are in a war, and the enemy is not one that comes to the negotiating table. The enemy is not a person that you can negotiate with and say, we want to cease fire. So it's a very different kind of reality. And I think that to a large extent, the world was thrust into this, unawares, or without as much knowledge and as much, understanding as we should have had ideally.
Yeah.
So on the one hand, we think about the health sector, the impact that it has had on the health sector, and then we start to think about our own sector, which is education. Bearing in mind that education is fundamentally different from schooling, in the sense that school represents a platform where children go to learn. They learn myriad things. They gain knowledge, they gain skills, they gain competencies. They learn how to relate and engage with other people. They learn how to ideally engage with nature, protect the environment. They learn values and ethics. That's education. And schools represent a platform or a space where young people can get educated. And so the traditional picture of schooling really was disrupted. And I think that people felt that they were thrown into a maelstrom. So whether you were a government entity or a parent or a school owner or a teacher, it was just very overwhelming for a lot of people. What happened, I think, in the first instance was people immediately began to ask themselves, what do we need to do to respond? We've carried out in the organization that I work with, TEP Center, a rapid analysis of the different responses from various governments around the world. And we've sort of looked at how Nigerian governments at the state level and at the federal level also responded. We've also looked at how school owners have responded, how schools associations have given guidance or not giving guidance at this time. And I think that there's still a lot of chaos, but I believe that people are, as you have said, if we're sort of settling down and settling into this very awkward but new normal. And so there've been a suite of responses, for example, from governments who have immediately activated radio schooling, television schooling, learning packets to children. Lagos State, I think, is very, we should commend them for being very rapid, about their own solution. Other states, Ogun State, Kaduna, so many states across the country. I think that even the decision to postpone the resumption of third term was one that was not taken lightly. I don't want to believe that that was taken lightly by government. And of course, the buzzword now is technology, isn't it? How to use technology to ensure that children can continue to learn at that time. So I think technology is really coming into the discussion even stronger, than before. I mean, we're having this meeting remotely. 3 months ago, we would probably have been trying to, find it face-to-face, digital. Likewise, children all over the world, including Nigeria, are learning remotely, whether through online, if it's affordable. They're learning through radio, they're learning through television, they're learning through paper packets. I was saying the other day that for the first time in my life, I heard the term WhatsApp school. And children are going to these schools and they're learning.
Really?
And I think there's just so much innovation that is happening at this time. That we're also trying to map in our organization, but I can talk about the survey maybe later on.
Okay, that's really something that you're saying that, and so like through this COVID-19, now where do you feel like who are some of the key players in civil society in Nigeria that are kind of working with the government? Because I know you've been one of the technical experts working with different governments to see the way forward. Like, how do civil societies come in to add value to what's happening right now, to this shift that's happening right now?
I think in the first instance, this is a health pandemic, which has implication for every other sector, whether agricultural, educational, engineering. It has an implication for every single sector, including legal, etc. So in the first instance, what I have seen is a lot of non-profit organizations have very, very quickly pivoted to humanitarian support in the first instance. Providing personal protective equipment, providing advisory through communications, messaging, I've seen a lot of civil society organizations do this. I've seen a lot of faith-based organizations do this as well. Just respond very, very quickly. For some civil society organizations, we've also seen the repurposing of the grants that they currently hold.
I see.
Able to help them, address the issues of the communities or the localities that they would normally be serving with some sort of educational or, other service. But right now, the needs of those communities or localities is actually, one, to stay alive, two, to have something to eat, and then education and other aspects, come maybe third, in terms of priorities or maybe even further down the line. So what we have seen is a lot of rallying around. I'm happy that there hasn't been a lot of dichotomy, between corporate, private sector, and civil society organizations or community-based organizations. Everyone is just rallying around, to some degree, to do what they can do to address the crisis that we find ourselves. So that is our reading of what has been happening thus far, in the sector, in the space.
Okay, I see. Okay, so what you're saying is that what civil society organizations have been doing is, one, humanitarian, repurposing their grant to humanitarian initiatives so that people are able to just eat. So with regards to education, at least, how have there been any quote unquote changes that have happened during this time to kind of repurpose the curriculum, or try to, in terms of the times that have changed? So what are the changes that have occurred? Because I was conducting some research for the MasterCard Foundation, which talked about the fourth industrial revolution in terms of science, technology, coding, and robotics. So now transitioning into, I felt like Nigeria was a bit slow in terms of trying to transition into the fourth industrial revolution, preparing graduates for that. So do you feel like this pandemic has forced us to go in that direction, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think that transitioning to some of the more sophisticated dimensions of technology and the digital revolution require a fundamental input, and that input is human capacity.
I see.
And if we're to measure human capacity by the quality of outputs from the education sector, then one can say that Nigeria is not really doing fabulously well.
Okay.
Now, obviously, there have been leapfrogs that have been made in technology, and we definitely have to mention those. We have to endorse them. But I think that when we look across board, at the amount of capacity that we have to transition seamlessly, to the fourth revolution, I think that it's still severely limited. And this is why I think I'm also seeing a lot of capacity development that is ongoing right now in cyberspace. A lot of organizations, whether civil society, private sector, even government, are right now investing their time and resources in building capacity.
I see.
Just yesterday, I was invited to be on a webinar to train government officials of Lagos State.
Okay.
And I remember, Efwa, when I got the call, it was very nice and casual, well, we'd like to invite you, to, come and train us, on, scenario planning. And I thought, oh, that's wonderful. Maybe it's 50 people, who are in the Ministry of Education, senior, directors, senior level officers. I said, so how many people are we expecting? And I was told between 800 and 1,000.
Whoa.
Very casually, between 800 and 1,000. And I was, as we would say in our, our very, very nascent jargon, I was shook.
Wow. So,
not because of the numbers, but because this has been ongoing since the start of the pandemic.
I see.
The government has been training thousands and thousands and thousands of civil servants since the outset of the pandemic, and they're pretty used to it now. So yesterday we had 10,000 civil servants who registered to join this particular session. 1,010 of them could get in. Very, very professionally run. I have to tell you, it was very, very professionally run. You know, we had a test run, you know, we had the set up instructions that were emailed to me. You know, I had full IT support, you know, during the entire time. We had live polls, 3 live polls. It was really refreshing to see that the pandemic seems to have birthed a new way of thinking about how to use what we have to get what we want, how to build capacity to move into the sort of future that we're looking for. And I can only imagine that that is going to continue. I think that you have probably come across maybe 20 or 30 or even more different webinars, you know, that have caught your fancy at this point in time. And they cut across sectors, they cut across levels and industries and types of people who are speaking or presenting. I think that there is a lot of investment in capacity development, which going forward might need to be a bit more structured, a bit more systematic. But I am keenly aware of the fact that this is a crisis situation, and organizations and institutions are still trying to navigate their way out of it. But I do see a lot of commendable, you know, knowledge sharing that is happening right now.
That is. So I guess based on what I've gotten from you is that right now, with regards to the moving forward to the future, there's a lot of capacity development taking place as of now. So a lot of the government officials and different other stakeholders are just trying to just be aware first before they can now transfer the knowledge down the value chain to the student. So do you think that the civil society organizations that are in education, do you think that they can really key into capacity development, or do you think they can key into advocacy? If there are some holes within the education policy landscape, whether federal or state, or the suburb or the state version of UBEC, do you feel like where do you feel like there are holes in the value chain that they can come in even now during this period?
Great. I like to think of education as an ecosystem. And so there are many different players, and what they bring to the table is very different and very varied. I think that the contribution of civil society is unique in the range of capacities that they bring to the table. Let me make you laugh. I was once at an international conference, and we had a pre-meeting as part of that conference. And we were talking about civil society organizations, and some very learned, you know, academics in the room were, you know, speaking to us about how, you know, civil society really needs to up their game. They need to do this and do that and get better. And myself and a few other people who were in that room, who belonged to the same network, looked at each other and we smiled. And my response was very simple. I said, don't think of civil society organizations just as tree huggers and people that will hold onto the tree as you cut it down. You know, that's an important thing to do if you're really passionate about trees. You know, but it's not that which the entire spectrum of civil society do. So you might refer to me as some sort of, you know, academic. I have a PhD. I'm a member of civil society as well. There are many people who are learned, who are skilled, who are passionate, who are members of civil society. So I think the first thing for me is even getting that identity right. You know, this is a range of actors who have so much to contribute to the discourse, to policy, to implementation, to evaluation, to advocacy, and to activism if necessary. Right? So that a person hugs a tree does not mean that they are not a skilled, you know, intellectual. You know, we all have our beliefs, and we are allowed to exercise those beliefs within the confines of the law. So I strongly believe that there continues to be a role for civil society, perhaps even more so at a time like this. So in shining a light into the areas where there are gaps right now, in advocating, in joining the dots. What is happening at the level of government? How is that connecting with what the private sector is doing? In joining those dots, I think that there is a massive opportunity for the voice of civil society to be heard louder and stronger. Civil society also bring competence to the table as well. Very specialist competence in some in certain areas, and I think that this is the time, to really have them invest in not just building capacity, but also in the implementation, the design and implementation of initiatives and programs and policies, etc. At this point in time. So I think that depending on where we look at within the ecosystem, you will always find civil society there. And I think that the value that civil society brings to the table during this time of crisis is just incredible.
I believe so too. And can you just just highlight just a few examples of what they could be advocating for, during this time, or if there are current policies in place, but there are challenges in implementation, maybe civil society can come in and just nudge government to start implementing some policies. So are there some holes now that need to be filled? Like, right now we are in a case of emergency room. We need to do things quickly. So is there anything now that they can really just key into and really push the dial harder and hold government accountable on some certain areas? And then not, because when I was an organizer in Chicago, initially we're taught just to be antagonistic against government. But when I joined the organization I work for, Target Area, we now began to learn about collaboration with government to make things happen, starting with criminal justice reform. So how can civil society now really key in with government to now work together with government to now implement? Because, and also, it's not just about civil society coming in and saying we need this, but coming in as a knowledge expert, saying, okay, I think there needs to be a change in curriculum, maybe a pedagogy that mixes online learning with in-classroom learning or something like that. So how do we pilot that? This is just an example I'm thinking of from the top of my head. So what can they do? What would be the inroad? Because let's say I'm a civil society person and let's say I'm in Kaduna State. Where do I start from? How do I even start engaging with stakeholders to make things happen?
I think it's a great question. What I will say is that, wow, technology is the great leveler, isn't it?
Yes.
And technology has almost democratized access to information.
Sure.
In the sense that today, I'm talking to you, and most people don't even know where I am. I could be anywhere in the world right now. I could be in the Kaduna State that you're referring to. I could be anywhere in the world. And that is one incredible value that a time like this helps us to apprehend. That technology enables us to have access to a world that perhaps didn't have time to listen to us prior to now, or didn't prioritize our messaging at this point in time, or didn't think we were important at this point in time. Now, if I'm to give some very specific examples of where I think civil society can play in the education space, I think it was yesterday on an education group that I belong to, network that I belong to, when someone posted a flyer which really focuses on a webinar that is targeted at helping parents understand how to help their children learn at this point in time. This is something I'm a huge advocate of, because a lot of parents don't understand pedagogy. A lot of parents are not trained to teach. So how do you create a virtual learning environment for your children? Many people are struggling. And how do you do that within the context of real challenges around the cost of data, challenges around access to electric power, diesel, cost of fuel? How do you couch that within the context of parents that still have to work? People need real guidance at this point in time, and I see civil society organizations really beginning to plug that gap. We talked about curriculum. I think this is a time to reconvene a sit down and to say, look, is our curriculum still fit for purpose? You know, we used to talk about 21st century. Before the pandemic, we used to talk about 21st century.
Yeah.
Even though we're already 20 years into the 21st century. If this pandemic is showing us anything at all, it is that the 21st century is upon us, and if we're not careful, it will leave us behind if we're not careful. So how do we rethink our curriculum to really emphasize the sort of skills that are coming to the fore today as valuable? Flexibility, adaptability. How is it possible that a government would pivot from face-to-face trainings to webinars that are subscribed by 10,000 people within the space of weeks?
Wow.
What sort of skill do you need to be able to get that to happen? A lot of parents now, a lot of school owners now are thinking about blended learning approaches. So how do we mix it up and have a combination of face-to-face classroom teaching and virtual remote teaching? I think that there's a lot of technical expertise within civil society that can offer guidance here. I think there's so many areas and so many opportunities, so many low-hanging fruit. There's a group that I belong to, and a number of our members are, people that are renowned within the civil society space, and we're really focused on accountability and transparency. So a lot of resourcing is coming, into COVID-19 emergency response. But who is tracking that money? Who is tracking the implementation of those programs? Who is monitoring to make sure that palliatives are actually getting to where they're supposed to get to? Again, this is a huge responsibility of the civil society. And I believe that just with these 3 examples, we can think of 100 more, I'm sure, where civil society voice can become very, very active. And in terms of the platform, like I said, technology has leveled the playing field, and everyone now has access. So it's really about how do you draw on your networks to draw on their own networks, to draw on their own networks, to amplify the messaging around what you're putting out.
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. So you've pretty much talked about blended learning in terms of advocating for blended learning, also advocating for curriculum, how the curriculum would even could even change as a result of the change in the 21st century, and also even teaching capacity building for some of these school bodies and even the government and parastatals on how to now integrate technology into learning right now, that preparation phase. So civil society can even come into play, and even working directly with parents. You understand what I'm saying? Teaching them how to even adapt. Because I remember the first day the school was trying online classes for my kids. I mean, I just felt like a chicken with my head cut off. Like, okay, how do we download it? How do we do this and that? And I was going crazy. So that could also be another space where civil society can come in as well. So I wanted to
comes in there, if I may say, then you might find that costs are a little bit lower. It might be that civil society organizations are already resourced to do that sort of work, and so can reduce the burden on parents and on schools to be able to build those capacities and competencies.
That makes a lot of sense. So so I guess what I want to just kind of close out with is, first of all, with civil society organizations, one of my passions is civil society strengthening, capacity strengthening, in order for them to take on more and give more to society, obviously. So I wanted to get a sense from you. How do you feel like they can build their capacity so that they're able to do more with less during this time?
I think it's very closely related to the last discussion, last topic, last question, which is thinking about how might access to technology help you now. And by technology, I mean, I'm not necessarily referring to sophisticated apps or anything. Radio is a technology; it's low tech. Television is technology; it's low tech as well. In today's world, it's considered low tech. WhatsApp is technology. So the point is that these platforms exist, and there's probably no better time to be plugged into meaningful networks that have conversations and dialogues and have meetings and who are co-creating knowledge at this time. And I think it's our responsibility to find those networks and to plug ourselves into those networks so that we become a part of movements and structures that are bigger than us and stronger than us as individual organizations. I think that it's also our responsibility to be on the lookout for opportunities to build our own capacity, bearing in mind that you might want to identify where your own capacity gaps exist at this point, and ask yourself whether you want to build that capacity or simply partner with another organization. We do a lot of partnering. You know, as an organization, we're constantly looking for who to collaborate with, who to partner with, because we believe that that gives us a better chance of amplifying our voice, strengthening our message, and making our service offering a bit more robust. So we belong to networks, we belong to collaboratives. We're constantly looking to foster, you know, these sorts of partnerships, you know, of course, within our own sector, which is education. So I think that there are myriad opportunities, and it's really about us identifying where we want to go and then working backward from there to say, what do we need to do to get to where we're going as civil society organizations?
Okay. Wow, that was quite robust, Mo. Thank you so much in terms of really, because when I was thinking about this series, I said I couldn't think of a better person to talk about the education space, because I believe that after health, the health implications of it, we need to still, human capital development needs to keep going in spite of what is happening. So thank you so much. And it's so key. What you just closed out with was so key in terms of collaborations. You just give yourself a SWOT analysis as an organization. So, okay, where are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? Who can I collaborate with? So then which organization can I partner with? You know, if I'm a new organization, which established education-based organization can I partner with and add value? So that is also very, very helpful. And I believe that it was really encouraging when you said you conducted a webinar with over 1,000 people. So that was well done. So that is encouraging. So I know that we are on the step to the right direction. So thank you so much for your time. And
you're welcome. You're welcome. And if people on this webinar are interested in participating, lending their own voice, I don't know if I may, but if you're interested in lending your voice to helping us understand how education is happening at this point in time, then there's a survey that we're implementing with the NESG, the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, and I encourage you to please, you know, be part of that. It's bit.ly / Ed Innovation Survey.
Okay. Thank you. So no problem. I'll put the link on this post so that they can get on it. So okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. Bye for now.
Bye for now. Take care.
Hello, everyone. My name is Elens-Edeh with Social Impact Consulting. I'm a development consultant with 20 years of experience working with NGOs, international NGOs, and bilateral agencies to work in project support, monitoring and evaluation, and civil society strengthening. So now, I saw that local NGOs lack the capacity to manage large-scale projects, which can in turn impact their various communities because they have the connection based on their backgrounds. So this made me create this channel so that I can add value to you for free once you subscribe to this channel and get notified of upcoming videos. I look forward to hearing from you.